But one of the things I wanted to do before we got going was first to welcome you to Angels Don't Lie. This is a baby of mine, the podcast, which has turned into these Zoom sessions as well, which really help us to go further and have a guest and have, interaction and have expandable moments of love and deep conversations, which I really love. And then we turn that into the podcast and put that out to the world so other people can tune in and listen. And even though they can't see your face, they get information, they can hear your voice. And that's how we all learn. We learn by listening and leaning into that love. So I wanted to set a sacred space, and Billie and I were doing that kind of beforehand. We spoke, and we both have this beautiful intention of coming from our own place, but of love. And one of the things I love to do is to do a clearing. So even though we're using a computer and we're in distant places, I want to use this Palo Santo and send it to you through the waves, through the computer waves. And Palo Santo is healing for mind, body, and soul. Mind, body, and soul. So we're talking a lot today about healing wounds that have come down our lineage. And we're ready to release them. So Palo Santo can help us to do that in clearing and opening up our space. I also wanted to offer a mantra before Billie started, so we could hold that mantra for our own personal healing as we're going through this session and even afterwards, because a mantra, when we ignite it and work with it, can transcend pain, can really help us to move through that pain and open spaces within our being to allow that light in from the divine, from wherever you go. I'm going to just tell you God, so that's where I go. So what that looks like is just being really expansive. Does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? Mm-hmm. So the mantra is, I am love, I am. And the claim of this mantra is, I am, meaning the divine. I am holy. I am one with that love. So I am love. That means you're the center focus, love. And then I am, it's just recreating it, is sending it home, so to speak. So I am love, I am. So why don't you try saying that to yourselves and see how that feels, and see what you notice inside your body. And I'm going to just go ahead and start and introduce Billie, and you guys hold that mantra in that space for yourself, for what you're hoping to receive or understand or get out of the session, so that we can all begin to heal that deep lineage and the things that are the core wounds in our face right now. Very good. So I'm so grateful and thankful to know Billie, this beautiful angel that came into my life about a year ago. And I've been blessed to work with her and to know her and to kind of have fun with her. We go back and forth here and there. And she's taught me a lot just because of her energy, and I'm really happy to have her here. And I would love you to tell them a little bit about you. I know most people here know you, but some don't. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Billie?
Sure. First, Jeannie, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for coming. I do appreciate it. I'm really appreciative of you sharing time with me. So for those of you who don't know me, because there's some people on here I've known since 7th grade, and then there's some people I've only met recently, and some of you I haven't had the chance to meet quite yet. But I was born in Africa. I was born in East Africa. My parents met in East Africa. My mom is South African. She was a nurse. She was working in nursing in Tanzania when she met my dad, who was over teaching history and English as a second language through a program that was pretty similar to the Peace Corps. So my parents married, had me. We moved to the United States. And we hopped around to several different cities in the States on the Northeast coast, and we landed in a town called Ridgewood, New Jersey. in the early 70s. And for those of you who know Ridgewood, you would imagine that my family was one of the few Black families in Ridgewood. I graduated from Ridgewood High School. I have a bachelor's from Oberlin College in Ohio. I went to Ohio State. For those who know Ohio State, we go by the Ohio State University. And I ultimately ended up getting a doctorate from Pace University in 2011 while I was working. Most of my career has been spent working in sports and entertainment, and there's quite a few people actually on this call who I used to work with. And I worked at the National Basketball Association for a couple of years, and then I moved on to work at Madison Square Garden, where I worked for actually 27 years. So obviously the bulk of my career. I resigned, well, actually I semi-retired from Madison Square Garden a few years ago, mainly for a planned respite. I needed a break, we'll call it. And so 2 years now down the line, and here we are. And that's the short version of who I am.
Well, I love that. I mean, I think that you kind of covered a little bit of a basis. You are an amazing soul. So Billie, I know this is a big conversation that we planned tonight. What do you think is the most important thing for us to know?
There's so much. The conversation, I'm sure all of you have been in these conversations about race in America and all the things that are currently going on in America. One of the main things I think that we need to understand is the history, like the true history of Black people in this country, because what we learned in school was kind of a sanitized version. Even what I was taught in school was a sanitized version of history in this country. And even to go further back, we probably all need to read about the Native American Indians in this country and what happened with them at that time. I think education and learning is the most important part to truly understand what's going on. Racism is intertwined, it's interwoven in the fabric of America, and reading and education will help us all understand that and embrace that, and really I think some people have a hard time understanding when people say, it's institutional, it's systemic. It's ingrained in systems over years and years and years. And it just happens automatically, almost, is the best way for me to describe it. There's so much history that we could talk about, but I'm just going to share 2 examples with you of things that have happened in my life to kind of help you understand kind of things that have shaped me. The first one was when I was a baby. As I told you, I was born in Tanzania. And when we left Tanzania, my parents decided to travel around Europe. So we landed, when we got back to the United States, we ended up in Wilmington, North Carolina, where my dad was from. And I ended up starting to get sick. I was probably 8, 9 months old at the time, started to get very sick. So my parents took me to the hospital, and there was a Black line and there was a white line. So this was probably in 1965. So there's a Black line and the white line. The Black line was really long. The white line only had a few people in the line. So my mom, being a nurse, said to my dad, she's getting sicker. She's getting sicker. Like, we have to do something. She's getting sicker. So my dad went up to the white line, and my dad, there's a couple of people here who know my dad, a little bit of a temper. Caused a bit of a ruckus outside the hospital. One of the doctors came out to see what was going on. And my dad explained to him, that my daughter's very sick. So my mom at that time was still wearing African attire. She was wearing her African garb. And so when my dad pointed over to her, the doctor was like, well, who's that? And he was like, that's my wife. She's holding my daughter. And so the doctor was like, well, she can come in. You can't. So in the doctor's mind, a Black African was better, for lack of a better way to say it, than a Black American. So they let my mother bring me into the hospital. Long story short, obviously, thank God I'm still here today, but but my mother had to leave me because they were in the white side of the hospital. She wasn't allowed to stay in there. She had to leave me in there overnight. But, my parents actually raised my mom was a fighter, so she raised a lot of hell about that experience. But, it's something that was very traumatizing to my parents, and I'm assuming as a child, you feel stuff, and I'm a feeler, so I'm sure some of that is in me. So that was one experience I had as a baby. By the way, if you guys ask questions, I know a lot of you on this call, and I know you're not shy, so please feel free. If you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me. It's all good. And then the second story I want to tell you is about when my parents and I moved to Ridgewood, and that was in 1973. And it took them probably almost a year to find a house in Ridgewood. And about 7 months in, the realtor came to my parents and they said, okay, here's the deal. The deal is that people don't want to sell to you. Once they find out that you are a Black family, they don't want to sell to you, so they are backing out before we get to closing. So my parents said they really thought hard about whether or not they wanted to live in that kind of town. But at that time, Ridgewood had an extraordinary education system. So that's what drew them to Ridgewood. Long story short, we ended up finding a home. We ended up buying a home actually from a civil rights attorney who was more than happy to sell his home to a Black family. So that's how we ended up in Ridgewood. So those are just two examples of things that people experience. I'm sure there are people here on this Zoom who've had other experiences like that. There's many more I could tell you about, but I just wanted to kind of give you a feel of the kinds of things that Black people and people of color experience.
Billie, how do you think that those two stories shaped you and affected you growing up?
Oh, it's a good question. I was raised by, specifically my mother was an extraordinarily strong woman. And I think Eileen and Bridget, there's a couple people here that can tell you how I was very proud. I grew up in Ridgewood, which is predominantly conservative white town, but I was always very proud of being a Black woman. Like my parents made sure that I was always proud of who I was. The experience, what those experiences do that you experience all through your life is they make you cautious. They make you careful about who you interact with and how you share yourself with people. Because you're just waiting for the shoe to drop again, right? Can I go, there were, when I was younger, there were issues. Can I go to this person's house? The Waldrons, Eileen and Deirdre and Mary and Jack, welcomed me into their home like I was one of their own kids. And Bridget is another, her parents to this day, I'm, like their Black daughter. But there were a lot of people in Ridgewood who weren't as welcoming. And so, those experiences as a kid are really hard. Or you can come to my house, but you can't date my son. It's just, they're really hard. But my parents were, really good about making me confident in who I am as a woman and making sure that I still fought hard to be the woman they wanted me to be or they expected me to be in spite of those experiences. I've had a couple experiences with the police, which are a little bit different. Those just make you more cautious. But in general, I feel like they've made me stronger, but they also at the same time make you cautious and you tend to put up walls to protect yourself.
So what does it look like for you now as an adult? Have you had experiences that you felt afraid or scared or segregated? Have you had those experiences?
I've had experiences where I probably should have been afraid, but I can't say I was afraid. I think the last 4 or 5 years have been pretty difficult. I've been walking down 8th Avenue and been called a racial slur. I've been, people driving down, yelling out their windows, racial slur. There are people definitely who feel very confident in their ability to share their beliefs about people who are different than they are over the last 5 or 6 years, I would say. So the last 5 or 6 years, it's been very in your face, but it has made me want to fight even more. I mean, as an adult, I just feel like, okay, it's time for us to take a stand. It's time for us to step to the table. I have family in South Africa, as I told you, and my cousin sent me a text, and he said to me, it's America always made us feel like they treated everyone equal, right? That everyone is equal, no matter your race, creed, or color. And he said, it is so disappointing for those outside of your country to see that it was all a lie. So I received that text from him maybe like a week and a half ago. So, you know, it's a lot of emotion. It's a lot of feeling.
Can I ask you a question, Billie?
Sure.
So something I keep coming up against in conversations, especially over the past few weeks, is that people really genuinely believe that these systemic things don't exist anymore. They don't believe redlining still happens. They don't believe, you know, they think it's all a thing of the past. Like, how do you have those conversations with people who don't have that experience, don't know people that have those experiences? How do you make that a reality for them?
I think it's hard to make it a reality for people. I think one of the things that we have in our society right now is that if you are not experiencing something or you don't see it, then it's not true, right? I think that's something in a lot of different areas that we're having in our society right now. For me, the only thing I can do is give examples of you know, when you work in a corporation, not to name any specific corporations, but when you work in a corporation and people who are of color are women who are being bypassed for promotions, who aren't being paid the same. They're just, it's in the system. It's inherent in the system. It's in the structure. You know, I think it's difficult. So to get to your answer to your question, I think it's very difficult to explain to people and get people to really embrace the idea. The only thing you can do is really give them examples. But a part of me feels like the people that I need to, that my job is not to convince somebody who doesn't believe, right? Hopefully you come on board along the way, but I want people who are willing to listen. You may not agree with everything somebody says, but you're willing to hear, you're willing to listen. It's like, you know, coronavirus. Some people think coronavirus doesn't exist, right? So I just think that I want to be around people who are willing to listen, who are willing to participate in the conversation. Question from Bridget. Did I answer your question, Heidi?
Bridget texted a question in. She said, did your parents not settle in Europe because of racism? Because racism was worse in the 60s? Is there a country today that does a better job and has much less racism than we?
Oh, Bridget, good question. My parents never planned to settle in Europe. My dad always wanted to come back to the United States. And we ended up in New York, and then we moved to Ridgewood. And my mom wanted to be in the United States as well. So we were just traveling around Europe. It was never a plan to stay in Europe. And the answer to your question, that's a very good question. I don't know, because when I talk to people a few people that I know who live in other countries, they have racism as well, right? It's just a little different. I think the thing that at least people that I talk to outside of the United States that they're struggling with is, you know, we talk about equal rights and we talk about, you know, equality, and it's just not, we just don't have it. I think that's the thing about the United States, but I can't really speak on a lot of other countries.
I just didn't know if there was someone that we could like glean from, look to, that might be doing it, taking a more creative approach or more direct approach that we're, you know, not thinking of.
I don't know. That's a really good question, and actually, I would like to know. So, you know, I'm the Google queen. So,
oh, girl, stay off that Google.
But I think that's a really good question.
Of course, he does.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Does that help a little bit?
Where? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bridget.
No, yes, no, it's good. I would just also say though, in your synopsis of Ridgewood, and I don't know how your take on this was, but what Billie didn't tell you is that she lived, I mean, Ridgewood was a white neighborhood. There was one black street as I knew it. Billie lived right in the middle of the white people, like right where, I mean, her mom was not compromising, if that would have been considered a compromise to stay with people of the same color. I don't know. I'm just saying she didn't mention that, but.
Yeah, no, my parents were moving to Ridgewood. They were going to buy the house they wanted to live in, for sure. Anybody else have any other questions before we move on? Melissa?
Unmute. There you go.
Do you think that, like in the job sense, do you think that it's the equality is guided towards only one race, or do you think it's like certain levels? Like, does it include like lower equality for like Asians or Hispanics?
You mean in terms of discrimination?
Well, I think more of like, you know, you were saying like women of color don't get like the equal pay, or do you think that goes with all races, or do you think it's specifically targeting, you know, the Black race?
In my opinion, I'm going to call out somebody to chime in on this, but in my opinion, I would say it's most races. I'm not going to say it's all races. It's women, even white women, Black women, Asian women, Black men, Latinos. I think that we all have, you know, a lot of companies really should have like a pay grade, right? And you get paid based on the job that you do. But that's not how it works. It's who you know, it's what time you come in, it's I mean, I'm sure I see you shaking your head. I'm sure you've had experiences too, right? Where you weren't being paid what you should be paid. And that's the stuff that's institutional, right? So if I have a job and I'm working, and I'm going to point out Freya as an example, and we can look at Freya and see Freya is blonde and blue-eyed, but when I was interviewing for her to come to Madison Square Garden, there was this whole conversation where I said, I'll interview and I will hire the person I think is best for the job, but I want to see a group of candidates that are multiracial. I want to see diverse group of candidates, which for the person that I was working with was a hard thing for her to comprehend. So I had to reach out to my sources to get people to come in. And I interviewed probably 15 people, however many I interviewed. And then you see who I hired. I hired Freya. She was the best person for the job. But everybody doesn't have that process, right, that they go through when they're hiring. If everybody did that and they hired the best person for the job, I mean, there's a lot of research that shows that people hire who they're comfortable with, right? So you're likely going to be more comfortable with somebody who looks like you. So I don't know if that helps answer your question at all, but.
Yeah, it does.
Nancy?
Hi, Billie. I thought it was really interesting, your comment about when you were a baby and the doctor would let in your mother because she appeared to be from another country, right? So she wasn't American. Do you, I mean, you know, I'm a little naive about this, but is that present still today, do you feel like? I mean, that Blacks from other countries would be more welcome than American Blacks?
Just a guess, but I would say because of the feelings about immigrants in the country right now, that would not be the case. I don't think they'd want anybody. I mean, if it were yes or no, it would be no. I don't think one would be better than the other with how our philosophy is in the country right now with those who aren't from the United States, even though the reality is none of us are from the United States except the Native American Indians.
Right.
But I think today, because of how our philosophy on immigration and immigrants, that would be different.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
You look like you're thinking. You look like you're deep in thought.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, no, I'm just listening. I mean, you know my experience. I'm half German, half Black, born in Germany in '64, and they wouldn't marry my parents because my father was Black. It took them, I think, 4 years to get married. So, I mean, and I've dealt with racism my whole life. I mean, white people didn't like me because I was Black, and Black people didn't like me because my mother was white, and Texas was my worst experience. So I'm just kind of recalling all of those past awful experiences. But to your point, praise God, my parents were strong. And I go with your example, you know, I never felt less than. They instilled a great deal of pride and confidence. You know, my father's military, so I can fish, hunt, and fight. And, you know, he gave us the confidence, and my mother did too. So that's what saved us and allowed us to be well-adjusted in adulthood.
Right, right. And Petra's parents are parents amazing, by the way. She was raised with amazing people.
Thank you, Billie Streets.
I think Amy has a question.
Amy,
I do.
Amy, how are you?
Hi, Billie. I'm so glad to know about this just in time.
You're here.
What's that?
I said, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. We've got Theodore too. See, there's Theodore. He's tearing up the place right now because I just got home. I wanted to comment on what you had said before. You had I can't. And now I think it was Bridget who asked, or maybe it was Kim who just asked about whether African Americans are sort of set apart in if it's really income or in pay. And I just read something that broke that down. I'm trying to find it, but it does seem that that's a separate. So more even past Latinos and past Asians, and that's kind of as far as it got. But I did just read a couple of charts and sources. I'll see if I can find them to send them in. And you know, just listening to the experience of strong parents and biracial and interesting. So you know, and in our family, just the different flow of the wealthy neighborhood and my white parents and my white sister and being picked on. I did not really come out with an insane amount of confidence, even though we did have very strong parents and very educated and very strong military and so forth. So it's interesting just to to hear the difference of a lot of bullying in school where I was, very specific to me. And I just had a personality that was, more going to look to myself for the problem. And we spent a lot of time on it, but it didn't, a lot of family time was devoted to, too many dinners, really. Poor Alex. So, anyway,
Share a story with the group, not to call Amy and Alex out, but Alex and Amy's mother worked with my father in the 70s in the city. And when Alex and Amy's mom literally was on her deathbed, she was holding my mom's hand. She was close to death. She said to my mom, please make sure that Billie stays in Amy's life, because I need to know that she will continue to have a Black person in her life who loves her the way you guys do. So that's my Amy and Alex story. We've known each other a really long time.
Really long time, and that's that it's an interesting request, because it's like there's almost this token aspect to it, right? And then there's also this deep love that she knew that was the total equality of it. Stop it. Sorry.
Well, she tried her best for you.
Yeah, Billie, this is the first time I'm hearing that, so that's pretty unbelievable.
Told you that story? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly heard of it, that, you know, that we were all to stay in touch, and that she wanted us all to be in touch. But yeah, that's, I mean, a lot of people, yeah, kind of worried about me as the, you know, the adopted biracial kid in this family, in this very white family, although dad was Jewish, whatever, Hungarian Jewish, so, you know, a little darker in kind of complexion, but whatever.
Anybody else have any questions, thoughts you want to share?
You know, I can't keep my mouth shut, Billie.
No worries. No worries.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned in the past couple of weeks, like reading and researching, is that racism is not just hate. It's also just like strictly benefiting off of a system that oppresses other people. And so I've been trying to like explore in my own mind ways to, like, I've never worked in a corporate environment, you know, or a traditional job, but like, you know, is it the job of the majority to recognize that this is happening and take it upon themselves to even out the playing field? It feels like that's our responsibility, you know, to stop benefiting off of a system that's keeping other people in place like that. Does that make sense? It's not even like a fully formed question, but it's kind of what I've been wrestling with.
It makes sense, although I am a little uncomfortable with it's the white person's responsibility part. I don't know what the exact answer is necessarily, but I think that we all have to educate ourselves and understand about each other and talk to each other and hear each other. But a lot of these systems that are in place, like it's almost like what I visualize when I close my eyes is they have to be torn apart completely, like deconstructed and rebuilt, right? Like it's almost like they're I'm looking at my wall because it's almost like they're in the walls, right? It's like if the walls could talk, they are in the wall. So yes, we need the majority to step up and say, okay, what are we going to do? And I've been on several Zoom meetings in the last couple of weeks where there are a lot of companies that are stepping up and trying to figure out what are we going to do? What kind of solutions do we have? But on a broader scale, it's a lot of systems literally have to be broken down and rebuilt. Education has to be broken down and rebuilt in Black and Brown communities. Healthcare has to be broken down and rebuilt in Black and Brown communities. You know, so I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Billie, don't you feel that that somewhat is the hate that's coming to the surface and bubbling out, where it's not working, and we didn't create it, we didn't build it necessarily. This is lineage, this is old, and it's not working anymore, and it's so uncomfortable. But love and the breakdown of the systems, like you said, like creating new out of what's broken rather than continuing the same storyline. Like it's uncomfortable. I love that you're saying education. We need to learn and we need to absorb that energy of like, that was the past. We don't have to blame each other. We can learn and we can do better.
Yes. I mean, I've gotten several phone calls from people kind of asking like, what can I do? What do I do? And, you know, the one thing is, and I said this already, but we have to educate ourselves, and God knows we have to educate the babies. Like we got to educate our children. They are our future. And it's not easy, but there's a ton of resources, some which are on the list that Jeannie mentioned earlier, that you can go to help you talk to kids. It's a tough conversation, right? But we need to educate our children. you know, you can join groups and activities where there are people who look differently than you do. You know, I know one of my friends, who I won't call out, but, you know, said to me, you know, everybody in my town is white. Like, every activity my kids go to, they're all white kids. Like, what do I do? Like, how can I get them exposed to people who look different than they do? So it's a question that everybody has to answer, but everybody, to Heidi's point, everybody's going to have to kick it up a notch, and everybody's going to have to, you know, research and look and find places where they can take their families. And I would say that, to your point, Jeannie, is I believe, and, you know, some of my friends have been like, why are you so quiet on Facebook and social media? It's because I haven't been able to speak from a place of peace and love, and I just feel like anything that I post is going to be hostile and angry. And I just think that in order for us to get to the other side, that we have to up level, that we have to raise our vibration, that we have to come from a place of love and peace. Like, everything that we do has to be out of love, and it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy. And by the way, it's going to be a marathon. It is not going to be a sprint. I think that a lot of people are hoping that this is going to happen very quickly, and we're going to get back to, quote unquote, whatever normal was, because I don't even know what normal is anymore. I don't know about you guys, but it's going to be a long road. But, you know, I'm a believer that positive things do not grow out of fear. Positive things do not grow out of anger. That we have to get to a place of love. And, you know, it's important to believe in something, and it doesn't, you know, if it's God, Buddha, Allah, universe, source, whatever you're comfortable in, we have to start lifting up our faith. We have to start believing in something bigger than us. We have to up level is the best way. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, it reminds me of a Bible quote that I read recently, and I'm gonna not do it word by word. I'll just give you the gist of it. But it was when the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles, and then they turned and they spoke in their native tongue. So first it was this fire, and then they each spoke in tongues, in different languages, but it was the same message that God delivered. He didn't want us to be the same. He wanted us to be diverse. He wanted us all to hear the same message. So this healing, I feel like, has been, you know, dated back. It's biblical. It's old. It's older than time. And if we can come to a place of rest and peace within ourselves, of real love, of honoring the people that we're with, you know, the people that are in the world that are different than us, that we love them equally, just as if they were ourselves, then we can start to diminish that hate that's living.
Questions? Michael.
Hi, Billie.
You're next, Michael. Go ahead.
Thank you, Billie. Thank you so much for this time and for sharing yourself. It's so valuable. And I'm sitting here feeling all kinds of things listening to you, and that's important, you know, to be feeling these things. So I just thought I'd take a chance and raise my hand, and I don't even really have fully formed what I want to say, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
I really resonated with what you had to say about the way that you felt that you had to conduct yourself in the world, about like being careful about who you associate with and what houses, you know, you would go into. And I really felt that when you said that. And I have to be honest, I thought for a very long time that I, as a gay man, and you as a Black woman, had a lot in common. And it really isn't until like just the last couple of years that I have really been learning that even as a gay man, I benefit from white privilege. That if I am willing to straighten my wrist, so to speak, and act like somebody I'm not. Now, granted, that's no way to live.
Right.
No, but I don't wear, my skin isn't rainbow color. You know, I can, quote unquote, pass if I want to be silent. As a gay man, I've learned that silence equals death. I die inside if I'm silent. If I can't, you know, hold my husband's hand in public, you know, when we have a moment, I die a little bit inside if I can't do that. But I do have that option, and I do benefit from white privilege. Because of the color of my skin, I realize that I can get a loan quicker. I can get paid more at a job. I could buy a house easier. I have easier access to health care. When I think about, you know, when I think about the struggle for equality among gay people, like a lot of the pushback around gay marriage was like, well, they're gonna ruin it, or it was like they're gonna like ruin the sanctity of marriage. And it, you know, what always struck me is that, well, what we want is just what you want, and it's not that I'm taking anything away from you. Equal rights means that we all have the same amount of the pie. You know, when I think of like racial equality, do you feel like the pushback is that same kind of like, you're going to get a leg up on me if I allow you equal access to housing or to healthcare? You're going to get a leg up on me, and I'm going to have less of a chance to get that? Or is it just a kind of keeping people in the places that we were brought up to think that they are supposed to be in? Do you understand my question?
I do sort of, yeah. I think it's a combination. I think you hit it the nail on the head. I think that there's this thing about if I get something more than I have, that I'm taking away from what you have. And what people don't understand is that there is enough for everybody. There's enough for all of us. There's enough money. There's enough love. There's enough peace. There's enough happiness. There's enough joy for all of us to have. But some people are fearful, right? So you're living in that place of lack. And then you think that, well, if we give more to this group or that group, then I'm going to have less of, when that's not at all the case, right? We can all have a little bit of everything. And then on the other side of the coin, I'm seeing a solid group of the population who've been quiet for a very long time, right? And now they're becoming more vocal. But I think that group of the population really does have disdain for people who look different than them, whether they're Black, whether they're Asian, even whether they're Jewish, whether they're gay, whether they're transgender, whether they're whatever, that group of people just have disdain.
Sorry.
We have to pray for those people, because you can't change their mind, right? They're not gonna sit down and talk to me and be like, oh, I get it. I mean, maybe you'll get one person or two people or something, but so I think it's a combination of both. I think you hit it right.
Michael, Michael, I think it was really, it was deep what you said. And I think it brings to the surface about trying to understand. A lot of people don't understand what we're hearing about white privilege. They're feeling very defensive about that. So I think you shed a little bit of light on that, Michael. Billie, can you shed a little bit more light on that for us?
Ask the question again.
About white privilege, because people are feeling very defensive. I've heard a lot of people say, like, you know, what does that mean? And being able to explain it would be what?
I don't have all the answers on that, and obviously I'm one Black person speaking, but I've had friends call me and say I'm sorry, or call me and say, you know, I feel bad, you know, that I'm white. And I think that that's the complete wrong place that we should be going. Like, everybody should be proud of who they are, proud of where they come from, and accept the fact that, okay, this is what was, but now we're heading into this new place, and this is what it can be, right? And I think that that's going to have to be a mind shift for people. But everybody's kind of, it's like we talked about, everybody's got to heal. Like we need to heal. There's people have gaping wounds, including myself, right? They're different wounds, but we have to heal. And white people have wounds that they got to heal too. Now we may tell you to hurry up and heal them because it's been a long time that we've been on this road of trying to get, you know, what's ours almost. I think that everybody's got to own who they are as a person, because that's what makes up the world. Like diversity is what, there's research that shows diversity makes companies more money. It makes more ideas, more thoughts, more deeds out of diversity. Diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. It's not, you know, it's not just the race thing, but I think that we all have to be in the place of being proud of who we are and being comfortable in our own skin and owning that. And then we can move on to help each other and talk to each other and listen to each other. But we as individuals first have to heal.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead. Who starts a question?
Hi. You know, you kind of hit the nail on the head to me earlier by talking about education, starting when kids are young. You know, there's that whole nature nurture thing, and nature being, you know, probably what you're taught by your parents, and that's more nurture, excuse me, and nature's probably more from your experience. So some people grow up with parents who bring down the racism, you know, and teach their kids that. And some people learn racism because maybe they had bad experiences. I had bad experiences in school. I grew up in the same era, and they had just integrated some schools, and it wasn't just black, white, it was very different socioeconomic class. So it was kind of a double fold thing. And I was bullied a lot as a white girl in school. And yet it didn't change my view of who to be friends with. I remember when the first black family moved in 2 houses down from me. I know my dad wasn't thrilled about it. I'm ashamed to say that. And I became instantly best friends with the girls, you know? So there's kind of that push-pull with nature and nurture. And I think it's really important to teach in school and show pictures with diversity and incorporate that. So when kids are little, you know, I have 2 nieces that are growing up in a very white area, and my sister's doing her best to teach them. You know, I don't think they would know the difference of any different color because of, you know, they're being shown and it's incorporated into their world, you know, even though they're kind of growing up in that white world. So I don't know, education I think is big.
Agreed. And I think it's important, and Bridget and I have been emailing back and forth about this, about, you know, this idea, this term that people say, you know, the term colorblind. I think it's important because obviously you look at me and you see that I'm black, so you're clearly not colorblind, right? So, and I see that some of you are white, but it's important to teach your children, okay, you know, this is Billie, she's black and she's from this place and she's this, but she's an amazing person, and she's this and she's this, but she's black and she's different, and that's okay. And our differences make us stronger and our differences make us better. But to, you know, one thing I hear people say is I don't see color. It's just, that actually.
I've said that. I've said that. You never said anything to me.
But no, I don't even remember. But it's important that, because you do see color. We all see color, right? But you embrace it, right? You embrace it. And I think that's what's important, is we see it, it's there. Obviously we see people look different than we do. So I think it's important for us to not say we're colorblind, and it's important for us to not say that we don't see color, but that we can say that we embrace everyone, that we embrace all colors and races and gender and sexual orientation, and we're all important, and we're all meant to be on this planet, and we're all meant to be treated well, and we're all meant to live a life of peace and joy and happiness and abundance. on this planet. And that's the way it should be. And God willing, in our lifetime, we'll be able to see a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's important what you just said, because the nuance or the semantics, I think the feeling is the same, but the way you're wording it is actually a much better way to say it than the expression I learned, you know? So glad you said that.
Thanks for sharing, Nadine.
Can I just piggyback on the educational front? I think, you know, I just studied to receive my certification in education, and the easiest and the most affordable way of bringing some equity to the country is really by offering free universal preschools and making those programs high quality no matter where the neighborhood is. And what the message behind it is also to try to even out the surplus in some areas being shared with the lower to middle income areas, because, you know, the taxes are what feeds the school systems, and it's been a long time that has yet to be corrected. So I think, not to get political, but it is important to vote with that conscious understanding that you will have to accept your local taxes possibly being shared with a neighboring area to make that reality affordable. But it's proven that it is the return on that investment is tremendous as a society, where they have tested it, 40 years of the testing, it's been out there. And the resistance is, I think, what we're facing right now is this tremendous amount of siloing of conversations. My biggest question is, how do we break down those silos? How do we get that diversity conversation, aside from this wonderful forum that is being offered today with us? Is it bringing leaders from diverse cultures into every school system and making it part of a curriculum? Where does that diverse conversation begin for young kids? And I agree, it is with our children to bring that change about and open up understandings. But I really don't know how that's going to happen. Where do you see, Billie, in your world, you would want a door to be open that's presently not?
In an ideal world, it starts at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's not going to always be able to start at home, but in an ideal world, it starts at home. I think you ask a really, really powerful question, and I think it's a really tough question as well, because I think you're right. I think that it needs to be put into the curriculum of schools. The problem is that there are a lot of people who aren't going to want that, right? So it's almost like we have to start having these conversations with like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And you hope that, so I'm going to use you as an example. You're out with some friends and somebody makes a racist or inappropriate or a comment that you're not comfortable with, and then you start to speak up, and then you from your heart say, this is why I'm not comfortable with it, and this is why I would prefer that you didn't say it, and this is why people X are this, right? And it's about that kind of, I'm going to show my age right now, but that shampoo commercial, he tells one person, they tell another person, they tell another person. It's like the word starts to spread. It almost feels to me like it really has to be something that really kind of organically starts and kind of starts to move out. Because if we start with the systems that are already broken, then we're not going to get anywhere. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Start with the systems that are already broken, meaning
like the school system as it relates to Black and brown kids, and not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, the system is broken.
True.
So to put curriculum in an already broken system,
fair enough, it won't be heard.
So that's why I mean, deconstructing is not the right term, but it's just like, it's almost like we have to start from the beginning. Mm-hmm. But I think that's why
poignant.
A long road. It's going to be, it's going to be a marathon for sure. It's going to take a long time, and there's going to be bumps, but that's why it's important for people to start up leveling, right? To start to start, you know, speak up if somebody says something that you're uncomfortable with. For me too, you know, educate ourselves. Listen, I learned the same thing you guys learned about Black history in school. So I've been, the last 3 weeks, I've been reading, and I've been trying to educate myself so I can be better, so I can do better, so that I can answer questions when people have questions for me. Like, how powerful, Eileen, for you to be able to speak to somebody who may not care for a Black person. I'm making that up, but how powerful for you to be able to speak to them and share your knowledge with them about Black history, right? So it's almost a snowball effect at the beginning, but systems have to be broken down. And as you said, not to get political, but that's an enormous feat.
It is.
Enormous feat. Not impossible, but enormous.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot to think about.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Hi. I just want to go back to something that came up about white privilege, and I just wanted to point you in a direction for someone who helped me really understand it. Brene Brown has a lecture that I think she put out in like 2017, or a podcast about, and she defines white privilege as unearned privilege, you know, like, and I think what you said before, I don't have to earn the right to be on that line with that baby who's sick. I don't have to earn the right to be the one who gets a house approved. I don't need to earn the right to have my son get pulled over and treated with respect, as opposed to being, you know, treated differently. And I think the education, like when I talk to people who, oh, white privilege, I earned everything in my life. I don't have, I worked so hard for everything. They're not understanding what that means. And I think the public nature of some of these incidents where there's videos of police officers on the neck of somebody who bounced a $20 check, you know, I think that conversation will start to change. But I think getting people to understand what that unearned privilege is will help them understand the true depth and breadth of the issue, I think. So I would just suggest, like, Brene Brown's video on that was really great. But there's so much education where people think, oh, I'm not colorblind, I don't see color. But you don't even realize how you benefit from it by walking around with your face looking like it is. So anyway, I just wanted to comment on that. So, love you.
Just to piggyback on that, you know, just saying those words, you know, I benefit from white privilege, is educating someone too. Just for the fact that, you know, a lot of people don't believe it happens, and just by people that have benefit from white privilege, just saying it, it's educating and saying, no, it is happening, and it is something that we need to talk about. You know, and talking about education, you know, it's having those tough conversations. You know, I know that we've had some tough conversations within our own groups, and, you know, it's conversations that you're going to learn something from it and hopefully teach someone else from it. I mean, some people, they already have their minds set up, made up and set up, but it's at least having those conversations, you know, hoping that, you know, your point or the way that you think or the way that you see society functioning at the moment, it's going to get across to at least someone. But I feel like just having those tough conversations is extremely important. And for those people that do say, you know, I benefit from white privilege, you know, thank you, because you're opening those conversations up, because it's just showing that, no, it does exist. You know, and unfortunately, there's all those people that are going to be reluctant to hear and reluctant to admit that it does, but at least a lot of other people are hearing. So,
and to piggyback on what Carlos just said, it's you know, a little bit kind of like I said to Eileen a minute ago. It's just it's the power of coming from a white person to another white person. That just takes it to a whole nother level versus me trying to explain to a white person. You know what I'm saying? So I think, to Carlos's point, it's really powerful for sure. But it's about courage, right? We all have to have the courage to step out, you know, and maybe someone's going to be angry with us. Maybe somebody's not going to be happy with us. But if we know in our heart and we know in our spirit that we're doing what's right, You know, and I always say to friends that nobody has to go to bed at night but me. You know what I mean? So so if I'm feeling like I've done the best I can do, and I've done all that I can do, then my heart is clear. My heart is clear, and I think that's where we have to get to, is that we're all doing the best we can do, and we'll all be on different roads, right? Our journeys will all be different. We won't all do this. We won't all do the same thing, but if we all take a little piece of the pie and try to move it forward a little bit, I think the wave will grow.
I really love how Deirdre brought in exactly what I was looking for, like that conversation of how to describe white privilege, so we can teach and educate, because we don't know that we've carried this in us, and it's kind of shameful as well to know that it's there and you haven't looked at it. But I think in doing our work and showing up and knowing, we can heal that shame, and we can do better by asking these questions and having these type of conversations, and being willing to say, like, I can own that without shame now. I can own that because I can learn to be better. Because when we don't know something, then it just keeps growing and evolving. And when we look at it and we know it, then we can do something about it. There's the power, right? You gave some. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I have a list of questions that Billie had coming at her the past couple of weeks, and I thought maybe I'd pop those in there if you don't have any other questions. Melissa.
Can I just make a comment? And I've been listening to all of this and I'm flying away a little bit. I'm a really deeply feeling person, and I've had such a hard time these past couple weeks because I can't stand the hate. And it for me is, I love everyone, and it's hard for me to see people hating people because they look different. And even the educational part, I'm 43 and I'm putting myself through college, and one of my classes was great books, and I was forced to debate why racism was good. I went home and cried because it was so hard for me, and it was on the book Heart of Darkness. So it's like, for me to come out of that, pulling it the least, I guess, hateful, was challenging. But it's also hard sometimes because I feel like I need to keep my mouth shut, because there's many times where I'm automatically thought of, because my skin is white, that I'm a racist. And it's not about me at all. And I think this whole time has just been extremely hard for me, because I can't stand to see why people hate so much. It's not really a question, but maybe just a comment out there, because even me, like, what Michael was saying, my skin is very badly scarred, and I can cover it up. And hopefully people can learn who I am from my heart the second maybe my long sleeves come off, or my skin is exposed. I can automatically see a lot of change in people, and it's so hard for me. And there's so many people asking, you need to speak up now, we need to make a change. And sometimes it's really hard because I feel I get too emotional with it, if that makes any sense. And sometimes I say the quiet ones are the problem, and I don't want to be seen as the problem, because I pray on it and all, but I think I just feel so much that the hatred is just so hurtful that, I don't know, maybe I'm just ranting.
No, I hear it, but I actually feel that. Like, I feel what you're saying, and I'm a feeler too.
Like, sometimes I want to scream, like, just you have the same organs, like, stop hating people, because they're like, that. Just, to me, it's really a hard concept that I've never been able to wrap around my head as to why people can be so hateful because you look different. And at 43 years old, it's still so hard for me. And I understand, and I'm you know, I do the education as well, and you know, the systems are very broken, and a lot of times I have to be quiet in classes because they're drilling their beliefs on you, and it has to be their beliefs, and it's really hard because you want to stand up, but then again, you have a grade, and you're in that point where it's like, okay, I'm paying for a really expensive school. If I speak my mind, my grade is going to go down, and now I'm not going to get the scholarship to better my life. So it's definitely a broken system, and it's hard, and I feel for you. I feel for everyone.
But I appreciate you being willing in this forum to speak from your heart. Like, I think that is powerful, what you just said. You spoke so powerfully and beautifully from your heart. And I think
I try to see the good in everyone.
That can make change. That can make change. And you know, we have to not, you know, I went through this thing for a little bit that I was like, well, why didn't I do more? I should have done more before. And, you know, I keep hearing about, you know, the younger generation being mad at my generation for not stepping up, for not doing things more powerfully. And, you know, I had to let that go. Like, there's a whole lot of reasons for all of that stuff. But, you know, you will get to a point where you will be able to share your heart and confidently and comfortably. And it will be powerful, just like it was just now.
Thank you.
And we can return to that mantra that we did when we opened, because it starts with you. It starts with, you know, as an individual. When we return inward, we turn to love, then love shifts things that we can't even recognize. It can make great changes, and then we can move forward. But we can't move forward on the outside if we are a mess on the inside.
We have to heal.
Do you want to have anybody else any questions? Because we're getting ready to wind down. I see a couple of people have their hands up. I don't know if they're still, are these new hands, Amy, Deirdre, Michael, are they?
Old hands.
I do. Hold on. Well, I really didn't have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure if okay. It was back on the kind of describing white privilege. I had that article up on my Facebook page at some point, and I just sent it to everyone part on the chat. So I don't know if everybody sort of knows how to get to the chat. I've only done like 3 Zoom calls ever, and I think they changed it since the last 2 times. So
yeah, but it's right in the chat if you want to access it.
Yeah, it's a really good, easy, sort of gentle. I think you know, I mean, there are a few places to find similar descriptions and so forth, and kind of sending that one around because it seems sort of, you know, to touch on the not blaming and or it just anyway, it describes the reason why it's not a blame thing. This isn't about, you know, it's sort of not, yeah, but there is, yeah, place to, you know, to do about it. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll add that to the resource list too before we put it in the podcast. So
Okay,
inside
cool.
the chat, guys, there's that PDF with resources. And I think that's what we were going to bring them to, Billie. Like, what can you do? Like the things that you can actually do to start making a difference.
We've talked about some of those things. It's about education. It's about teaching our babies, stepping up and speaking out. If somebody says something you're uncomfortable with, you know, speak from your heart. Speak not in anger. Speak in peace and love if we can, and share what you're feeling and share why you think it's appropriate. And it may hit that person positively and it may not, but at least you've done what you can, and you can contribute in a positive way. And the other thing is support, donate, volunteer, mentor. There's tons of companies, and I put some of them on that list who would be more than happy to take your money and more than happy to have you volunteer or get involved in one way. And they're all different organizations with different missions. And some will speak to you stronger than others, but pick one or pick 2 that you feel really strongly about and get involved in one way or another. Those organizations would be really happy to have you. those are the step. Those things are our starting point.
Agreed. I love those. Those are awesome.
Can I say something before we close?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to share. I know everybody has a different spiritual bent on this call, but I'm going to share something that happened to me over the weekend because I believe it was a message that was delivered for me to share with the group. I was saying my prayers in the morning, and my prayers, like I'm sure a lot of other people, have really been around like, God, we need you. We need you. Like, we need you now, post haste. And I said, God, we need you. And I heard, when I tell you, it was like a message that was so clear and so powerful to me. And what I heard was, I know you need me, but what we really need now is you. And that just touched my heart because it is so true. And I think that applies to all of us, right? Like the world needs all of us to step out in some way, in some powerful way, whether big or small. And I think ultimately it will come for all of us what that journey is. But we all need to be willing to take the walk and be willing to step out and speak up in whatever small or big way. And I'm hopeful and I'm prayerful that this conversation helped you guys in one way or another, and will inspire you to speak out in love, to up level, to raise the vibration, to take care of yourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, so that we can all go out into the world with overflow. I'm prayerful and hopeful that we will get there in our lifetime. But again, marathon, not a sprint. But I'm prayerful that we will get there. So I just want us all to remember that God said, I know you need me, but right now we need you.
Billie, thank you. Like, beyond thank you. Can you all join me in giving Billie some love, just some kisses, some whatever you want to do? Blow her some you.
Love you.
Billie.
Love you.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Very.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you guys for joining.
Great job. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming and showing up to this very big time in our world. You guys are really super amazing, and we just keep going forward and leaning in with our hearts.
Thank you.
I don't really have any. I think Billie did an amazing job. So it's really beautiful to see you all. Thank you so much.
Bye, Billie.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you
God
so
bless you
much.
all. God bless you all. Thank you.
Welcome.
When she smiles at you, she'll